Today is Friday, May 29, 2020, and this is an interview for the Oral History Project of Trinity University Women's Intercollegiate Athletics. My name is Betsy Gerhart Pasley. I was a 77 graduate, and Shelley, I was also a softball player and ran some track while I was there in the 70s. We also have Douglas Brackenridge. Raise your hand, Doug.
Hey.
Okay, there you go. Doug is a professor emeritus from the Department of Religion from 62 to 2002, and also Shirley Rushing-Poteet. And she was the associate professor of the Department of Physical Education from 1960 to 1995, and a department chair from 1985 to 1995. So our interviewer today is Shelley Story. And Shelley, were you the class of 96?
94.
94. Oh, perfect. And a softball player, as I understand it, a pitcher and a catcher. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to ask you about that. So, okay. Well, that's the formal introduction, Shelley. I sent you, I think, a list of some sample questions. And then there's a couple about maybe facilities and also your injury that we read about that we'd like to ask you about. But let me kind of start at the end of the beginning, because we want to at some point catch up with what you've been doing since 94. And that is, what do you do today? What do you fill your day with?
I am the Dean of Students at Southwestern University in Georgetown.
I did not know that. That's pretty awesome. Okay.
So I know a lot more about Title IX now than I did when I was an undergraduate.
You can help us with that too. Do you know Glada Munt?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So she was an early athlete. Doug and Shirley, I think, had a really great interview with her a few years ago as part of this project.
Right.
Cool.
I'm up to Southwestern, and I interviewed her up there.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't there, but Glada was one of my physical education majors, and she was also my advisee. So I knew her very well for 4 years.
That's fantastic. Yeah, she was the director of intercollegiate athletics at Southwestern until January of this year.
Oh, she retired. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I think
cool.
she did a semester. I think this spring semester she was on kind of a phased retirement, so she was still technically working this semester, but I didn't see her because of the situation that we're in now, obviously.
Right. Well, cool. Well, and I love Southwestern. I've got lots of friends who went there. So, well, that's fabulous. So, later we want to get to kind of how you ended up where you are today. But if you can harken back, how did you come to Trinity? What appealed to you about it? And also, did athletics play a role?
Athletics did not play a role because my high school did not have a softball team. So I played Little League, and I had no idea that intercollegiate athletics was even an option for me. I ended up at Trinity. My dad was a TCU graduate and diehard TCU fan, and I think really hoped that I would be headed in that direction. And basically TCU and Trinity were the only two schools that I even considered. I had a biology teacher who I just adored, who was a Trinity grad, and I heard about Trinity from her. Otherwise, I don't think I would have known about it. And I came down to a Trinity in Focus weekend and just fell in love with the campus immediately and knew from the moment I stepped foot on campus that that's where I was supposed to be. And I was right.
Cool. Where did you go to high school, Shelley? Yeah.
Midway High School in Hewitt, Texas.
Remind me where Hewitt is.
It's just south of Waco.
Oh, okay. Baylor wasn't in the...
Baylor was not in the equation.
Now, Shirley has some Baylor roots, so I'm going to be careful here.
You did not have a softball team in high school?
No.
Your high school was heavy in basketball, wasn't it?
Yes, and in every sport, I think, and now they have a fantastic softball team that wins state and sometimes goes to the national championships. But in 1990s, we didn't have, or I guess for me it was the 80s, we didn't have a softball team at all.
Did you play Little League with the boys?
No, I played with girls.
Okay, so y'all played Little League softball, but you didn't have a school-sponsored softball team.
Exactly. Yeah. So I played with people who went to school with me and people who lived in the area but went to other schools. But there were no, I mean, I guess the reason I say that is there were no scouts there. Nobody was coming to look, for the purpose of finding athletes for a college team.
And how long did your Little League last?
I only played for 3 years. I was a gymnast as a younger child, and so I didn't start Little League until I was 13. And then it ended when you turned, I guess it was maybe when I turned 16. So I played from 13 to 16.
Okay.
So what did you do between 16 and getting to Trinity?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's okay. A lot of us don't.
I did a lot of, non-athletic things, theater and that kind of stuff, but I think I probably just did kind of generic running and workout kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay. So let's fast forward. It's 1990. Would that be the semester you got to Trinity?
Yes.
Okay. How did you find out about softball?
I did not find out about it until the spring, and I, to the best of my recollection, one spring day, I knew that they were playing on campus, and I wanted to see them play, so I went to the softball field and watched. And I remember thinking, I'm at least as good as these people, so I could be on this team. And I don't remember how I don't know if I think I probably reached out to the coach, but somehow I figured out if there was a possibility to walk on and did some kind of tryout. And then I started playing on the team my sophomore year.
Okay, so you didn't get to play your freshman year.
No.
Okay.
Who was your coach when you first came?
When I first came, it was Teresa Machu.
Okay.
And then she left. I think she left after my sophomore year. And then Becky Geyer came in as the women's basketball coach, and they kind of had her also be the softball coach, which was an interesting situation. So those seasons overlap. So for our preseason and even the first bit of our real season, we had an assistant coach. I don't remember his name. But he ran practices and ran the games until basketball season was over, and then Coach Geyer would come to be the coach.
Was it Jerry Smetzer?
No, he was earlier.
Huh?
No, Jerry was much earlier.
Yeah, I think Gerald picked up after Libby Johnson left in
1980s, yeah.
Okay.
So we're trying to get our coaches figured out here, Shelley, so bear with us, yeah.
This guy was young, and I believe he was only there my junior year, and then he did not get rehired for the next year.
Okay, yeah. So you weren't recruited, you walked on, and interesting. Yeah. And also, I think, was that the first year that the new softball field had opened? Do you recall?
I don't know.
You may not even have known that when you arrived there, because it was on the lower campus, right?
Yes.
Well, you timed it perfectly, by the way, Shelley. Yeah, part of our story is up until 1990, I believe that was when the new fields were dedicated. We didn't even have a field on campus. We really didn't have a practice field. We were usually playing at Brackenridge Park. So yeah, your timing was impeccable.
Maybe that's why I went to see a game that spring. Maybe I had heard that the field was new and I wanted to see it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So had they not had that field, you may not have known about it. It would have been harder to find out.
Yeah, it's possible.
I'm just looking at what I had written. It said so the 1990-91 would have been your first year on the team. Is that
That
right?
was my first year at Trinity, but I wasn't on the team yet.
Okay, so 1990-91, you weren't playing.
Correct.
Okay, because I see they had a game they lost 32-0.
That might have been the one that I saw where I said, "Hey, I could be on this team."
Right. Okay.
so you were able to talk to Teresa, who, by the way, we interviewed the other day. That was a
Oh,
really fun
really?
day. Yeah, this has been a fun travel back in time for some of us, but yeah, she's doing great with the local school district here. So you walked on then your sophomore year, I guess spring. So tell us, how did that go? What was the season like? What was the competition, the teammates, that kind of stuff?
I remember it was a small team. We did not have a lot of subs. I don't think we won a game. I remember feeling like I had never left, you know, like it felt, it was very easy to integrate and pick up. Of course, it helped that I was a pitcher, and at that time they didn't have, I was the only windmill pitcher that they had. The other pitcher was a slingshot pitcher. So I was pretty quickly the fastest pitcher available for any game, which made it nice. You know, I mean, I didn't walk on and have a ton of competition. I walked on and they were like, we need you, let's get to work. Yeah, I made friends on the team who were people I hadn't yet met at Trinity. And, you know, it's kind of place where you feel like you know everyone, and then you end up in a situation like that and you realize, oh, there were people that I had never even maybe crossed paths with to this point. So a very different friend group, different set of connections. Yeah, and I remember just being really happy to be back on the field.
By the way, I'm going to give you a quick technical update. Shirley has a bug in her system. You're still there, right, Shirley?
I'm still here, but I'm just frozen.
Yeah, but it's a good. So we always wonder how Shirley will freeze in that call. So I apologize. This will be fun for archivists when they look at this later. But anyway, Shirley's still with us. Yay. Now, what other things did you do on campus when you talk about a different set of friends? And we hear this a lot. What were some of your other activities and what your other friendship groups, I guess?
I was a mentor for, I think, my sophomore, junior, and senior years. I was an RA my senior year. I was very involved in what was then called ARHS, the Association of Residence Hall Students. So I was an officer sophomore and junior years. I was a French major, so I did some things with the French. I don't remember if it was called the French Club but I remember doing some extracurricular things related to French.
Cool. Were you in a social club?
You mean like sorority? No.
No. Okay.
I was in Alpha Phi Omega, the service fraternity.
Oh, good.
By the way, did you take any religion courses from Dr. Douglas Breckenridge?
I did not.
Well, you were lucky. You were lucky.
I took a religion course from Mary Ellen
Ross.
Yes.
Oh,
I loved that course.
good.
She was a good teacher.
Okay. It's always fun to get stories of students who had Doug, so I always try to get some of those out of there.
I always hung out down at the gym, played a lot of racquetball. Well, let's see, by the time the new gym was in, there wasn't as much, there were only a couple of racquetball courts. So, but I spent a lot of time down there at the.
You look very familiar, and that might be why, because I also played a lot of racquetball.
Oh, cool. Yeah. As did I back in the day, when I had knees. So, you know, this is one of the projects where I dug in deep for Doug, because he's used a lot of people for us to go through, like Trinitonian articles, which sadly are really the only repository for how our teams did back in the day. And the 90s seemed pretty tough. How do you look back on that? Or do you even remember how you felt at the time with a winless season and those kinds of things?
You know, I don't remember caring that much. I mean, I think I would have loved to win, but we felt like such a ragtag bunch of players. I didn't think of it in terms of Title IX back then, but I definitely think we were under-resourced. I don't think we did any recruiting. I don't know how we got our new players. Someone must have been talking to them because we had a few new players each year. But softball definitely felt like the least important thing on the list in athletics. And for me, losing was, I mean, I was always having fun. I think honestly, as a pitcher, you get to handle the ball every play. If I wasn't pitching, I was catching. And so it was really the playing that was fun for me. And, you know, getting to have a regular physical activity incorporated into my life that also included a team that I really liked. And, you know, we got to travel now and then, and kind of just, I don't remember caring that much about losing, actually.
Sure. You remember, what do you remember about the coaches, about your coaches back then?
I remember Coach Mahu was just a little ball of energy. I really liked her. She was so positive, you know. She wasn't the kind of coach who would say, you know, who would get mad when you lost. She was always looking to correct what went wrong without making you feel like it was your fault. And I was sad to see her go. I think if she had stayed those next few years, we probably could have put together a better season by my senior year. Coach Geyer, I really liked as well, but she was just absent for a lot of the time because basketball was her main job. And so that was frustrating. The assistant coach who I mentioned that I think was only there for 1 year, I'm pretty sure. I didn't love his decision making. I don't remember him being negative either, but you know, he put me in the position to catch. We would play double headers and he would make me catch the first game and pitch the second game, which is not a good strategy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm thinking your knees are going to be already pretty frozen from that first game.
They crack and pop a lot these days.
Yeah, welcome to the club, right? Wow.
Shelley, can I read to you what Teresa Machu said about you?
Sure.
Okay.
I hope. I mean, do I want to hear it?
It's good.
This was the team posted a 1-win, 13-loss, 1 tie for the year, but she says, I'm quoting Teresa back at the time, she described sophomore Shelley's story as the most consistent pitcher on the team. Shelley had a great personality. She had a side of her that helps everyone relax and have a good time. It must be her laugh, is what she said. And then it goes on to say all the things you did: campus activities, residence hall mentor, campus tour guide, and then you were national communications coordinator for the ARHS. Is that right? And and travel to other schools and so forth. So Teresa thought very highly of you. You ought to know that. Okay.
Thank you. That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
That is neat. One of the things when I was rereading this is some of at least the storyline that was in probably the Trinitonian was that Teresa was burned out. And I think she was also coaching maybe volleyball. Is that possible? Oh.
No, Julie Jenkins was volleyball.
Basketball, I think.
I think it was basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, so Geyer came in and replaced her in both basketball and softball, right?
I don't remember that, but I guess so.
But I guess when I'm asking, and who knows when you're, and we were kids back then, right? But it sounds like Teresa was holding a really positive facade.
Yeah.
Does the point of her maybe being burned out seem plausible?
I mean, yes, knowing what I know now as an adult, but she certainly didn't let me see it then. I mean, I don't even remember that she was the basketball coach, whereas I remember very clearly that Coach Geyer was the basketball coach because I could feel that her priority was there. So if Mahu was coaching both, she was doing a really good job of giving us all attention.
It's interesting. Okay.
I think, let me intersperse here.
Oh yeah.
Teresa came from a very well-rounded background. She played everything at Trinity, and she was interested in everything. And Becky was recruited as a basketball coach. And so I think softball was kind of an add-on that she might not have known about until she got here.
Yeah.
That may explain a little of it.
Well, I think the other thing about the time she was coaching and Shelley was there was the coaches were still underpaid. They weren't getting a lot of support, and it was only really when toward the end of your career there where they got into a conference and they began to have full-time coaches and things greatly improved. So you were kind of there at the end when, you know, she had long series of losing seasons and not a lot of interest. You know, there wasn't a lot of interest in the sports, and I think that was part of what was happening there at that time.
Yeah.
But she always seemed to, what she would say to the Trinitonian was always upbeat. She would say that it wasn't the winning and losing, but the seeing players improve and to see team spirit, and that was important to her. So it seemed like that was a plus for her. But it was a pretty hard row to hoe back then.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved Coach Geyer as well. She was a fantastic coach. I think we just knew at the time that she had more responsibility than a human being could, you know, should have to have. And it made sense. I mean, basketball was in season when it was our preseason, so there wouldn't be any reason for her to come to a practice when she's supposed to be at a game for the other team.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So I want to ask you more broadly about your Title IX perspective or retrospective, but I'm going to start with your injury. Can you tell us about that? Because it sounds like that was a rough way to start the season.
Yeah. So I was catching that. That was one of those doubleheaders where the assistant coach had me catch the first game and I was supposed to pitch the second game. It also happened to be the first time my parents had come to see me play at Trinity. And they got lost on the way there, or they were in traffic or something, and so they were late. And what happened was there was a play at home, and when the ball came in right at the same time the runner came in, and I got my bare hand over the ball trying to keep it in. The throw was a little off the plate, and so as my bare hand was exposed, the runner slid. She was wearing metal cleats, which were not legal at the time. And one of those cleats just caught my finger and sliced my knuckle open. And so by the time my parents got there, I was ready to go to the emergency room, and that's where they drove me.
Wow. You remember who the team was?
I don't.
Okay. And so your parents never got to see you play at Trinity?
I could probably tell you.
I don't know if they got to see me play. I don't even remember if that should have been my
Texas Lutheran. You were playing Texas Lutheran.
Okay, Texas Lutheran. I think that was my junior year, because I remember I was living in McLean that year, and I had a lofted bed, and once I had the stitches and I was taking this pain medication, I couldn't climb up into my lofted bed. And so my parents had to move the mattress down to the floor, and I had to sleep on the floor underneath my lofted bed for a few weeks until I was steady enough on my feet to get into bed. I also remember, this is not super related, but it's a very Trinity moment. This is when we still had telephones in our rooms. And so every student had a telephone number, you know. And I missed 2 days of Italian in a row, and Michael Ward called my room to find out if I was still alive, because it was so unusual for me to ever miss class that when I missed 2 classes in a row, he thought I must be dead.
That is a Trinity. Well, the professors care about you, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I'm curious about the treatment, the response. Was it what you would have expected as a intercollegiate athlete, or do you remember?
I don't think I had any expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now having worked my whole career in colleges, I think it certainly could have been, there could have been a response from Trinity. I don't think there was any response at all. Nobody went to the hospital with me. I mean, my parents took me. If my parents hadn't been there that night, I'm not sure what would have happened. Maybe somebody from Trinity would have taken me, but they took me to the hospital. They brought me back. You know, all of my treatment was done through a local hospital and a local doctor and my insurance. I don't remember ever seeing a trainer other than to like show them how it looked and, you know, have them go, oh yeah, you can't play yet.
Yeah. How did you determine that you were going to be able to play again?
When the doctor said I could, I was out for the rest of that season. And so then it healed over the summer and I was back the next season.
Was your injury paid for by your personal insurance, or was Trinity responsible for that?
No, I'm pretty sure it was my personal insurance. You know, I mean, my memory could be wrong there, but I don't remember, you know, sharing any information with Trinity about it or anything like that.
But according to the record, you came back and played in March
Oh, really?
after you were injured here.
Well, there you go.
And again, you had an unfortunate season record of 0-12, but you did manage a tie because the last team didn't show up for the game. So you got a tie, but the coach said that when you come back, it was about the first competitive game they had. So they must have been glad to see you come back, and you played a few games at the end of the season. So
Okay, good. I'm glad to know that. I thought I was out the rest of the season.
no, you were at least. I mean, of course, we can't always trust the Trinitonian, but that's what it said, that you were back. So I think that's probably correct, that you were back. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna take that personally. I was a sports editor at the Trinitonian when I was a senior.
You know, there was the guy who was the reporter who always wrote the stories on softball, and maybe he wrote them on all. I don't remember his name. Does it say there? He was so good to
I
us.
probably don't.
It's in the footnote, probably. Oh, maybe not. Yeah.
But he was quoting the coach. You know, he had to
Yeah.
talk to the coach. So yeah, I gotta have a footnote, but I don't know whether I have his name. But
It wasn't Ron Nuremberg, was it, Doug?
no.
So
He's a little younger than me.
Shelley, was this your pitching hand or the?
Oh yes, it was my pitching.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
still have
guys-
a scar, and you probably can't see it on the.
oh wow.
There's a scar right here.
Wow.
Mhm.
Metal cleats.
But you graduated in 1994. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Mhm.
so that would have been your last season then, I guess. Is that right?
No, I'm pretty sure I was living in McLean, which was my junior year. So that should have been 92, 93.
Well, it says that they canceled the 1993-94 season.
Mm.
Huh.
We might want to check that. Maybe it was 94,
It
95.
said only 7 women showed up to practice for the team,
Oh,
and none of them, but I kind of got my years mixed up.
no, actually, that sounds correct now that you say it.
So your senior year, y'all weren't able to field a team, or do you
I think
recall?
that does sound true. Yeah.
Yeah, he canceled. It says he canceled the 1993-94 season, but then they picked up again in 1994-95. So, but the softball apparently was, well, it was a sport that hadn't been very visible, before they got that field. I mean, softball played always off campus, and so it didn't have the same cachet, I guess, as some of the other sports. But
Yeah.
if what I've got is right, that's apparently what happened. But again, then I think they picked up later on, and they did a whole lot better. They got a full-time coach and did a whole lot better.
Now that you say that, I remember I was an RA my senior year, and I lived in Lightner, and I remember having softball gear and walking from Lightner to the field. But I think we did a fall practice season, and then hoped that we would have enough people to field a team in the spring, and turned out we didn't.
Yeah.
I think Coach Geyer actually arranged for a few practices just so that those of us who were graduating would not have a year with no softball right before we graduated.
Wow. Yeah. By the way, I had a similar kind of blackout. I was really busy my senior year, and I'm trying to remember why I didn't show up on the track team that spring. And I probably was just inundated with other stuff. And I ran track for 2 years, but did my senior year. I'm still not sure why.
Yeah.
But so it happens. So question about just, you've mentioned a couple of times, now that you see Title IX through the prism of an administrator, what are your thoughts looking back, and how is it coming together for you, what it was like?
I think I didn't have any awareness at all of the law when I was an undergraduate. And I think I probably just sort of lived in a world where we accepted that men's sports were more important than women's sports. And I knew that that our uniforms weren't as cool as the baseball teams, and that our stadium wasn't as good as theirs, and that we didn't have as many options as they did. But I didn't think of it as a gender equity issue. I just thought, oh, this is just how it is, I don't remember anyone ever talking with me about, is this fair, and are there laws that make sure that this shouldn't be the case? And I probably also thought, I probably didn't make the connection that the support has to come before the winning can come. So I probably also thought, well, we get less because we lose. Because I was a big fan. I had played volleyball in junior high, and I was a big fan of the volleyball team. And so I would go watch them play. And I took volleyball as a recreation course a couple of times while I was at Trinity. So I knew Julie Jenkins, and I could see that they had better stuff than we did too. And I think I probably just made a connection that, like, if you do well, you get good stuff. But it never occurred to me that you have to have the support and the staffing and all that before you can start to do well.
That's a really neat perspective. I hadn't really thought of that, but you may have nailed it. Yeah. I'm going to ask you, this is a tax on your memory, and I apologize if you don't remember. So you were there in fall of '93. Did you ever go to basketball games, by the way? Women's basketball or men's?
Rarely.
Okay. There was a story that we'd heard about in the fall of '93. There was a Midnight Madness thing at the Bell Center. And the women's basketball team was not invited that first year, and I didn't know if by chance you would have been there for that kickoff. It would have been fall of '93.
It's very possible I was there, but I've been to so many Midnight Madnesses over the years at so many different schools because of the work that I do. I can't tell you if I was there or not.
Okay. Well, that first year that they held it, and I guess this may have been around the time that all the colleges were starting to do this. The women were not invited, and so one of the players kind of had her own protest of sorts and wrote a letter to the Trinitonian. That was Bob King's first year, I think, too. So we're just looking to see if anybody else remembers that. It sounds like, at least for her, it was in the following year, they did include the women's team. So that was cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How did you get from being a French major to where you are now?
That's a good question. I think, all those things that I did at Trinity are what led me down the path of student affairs professional. Peg Layton was the director of residence life at the time, and she was a very important person in my life. I'm still in touch with her. She's been a lifelong mentor. And I was a French major all along just because I loved French. And then I came in, like so many undergraduates do, thinking I wanted to go to medical school. And then like so many undergraduates do, when I hit organic chemistry, I was like, nope, don't want to do that after all. And so my sophomore year, I kind of had to take a look and say, what is it that I really enjoy doing, and how can I figure out what I want to do next? And the things I enjoyed were, the student activities, being a student leader, being a mentor, the role that I had in the Residence Hall Association, and then later being an RA. And so it occurred to me that all these people who did these jobs, like Pete Neville and Peg Layton, that they had made a career of doing this kind of thing. And so I started interviewing them, asking questions. How did you get to be where you are? And what kind of education did you need, and that sort of thing. And then that's what I did.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
What have you done in other schools before you came to Southwestern? Did you say you've worked in other schools?
Yes. So I did my graduate work at the University of Georgia. And I took a year off. I never studied abroad because I didn't want to leave Trinity. And so I took a year off between Trinity and grad school, and I went to France for about 5 months. Stayed in an apartment owned by Nina Eckstein, who was my faculty advisor. And I did a standalone course of study through the CIEF study abroad group. So I went to graduate school in Athens, Georgia, and then I've worked at Whittier College in Whittier, California, at American University in Washington, D.C. And so both of those jobs were kind of entry-level residence life jobs, resident director, residence life coordinator. And then from AU, I went to TCU, finally made my dad happy and got connected to TCU. So I was an assistant dean of campus life at TCU. And then I got a job at Gonzaga University, which is in Spokane, Washington, but on their Florence, Italy campus. So I lived in Florence for 9 years as the associate dean of student development there. And then came here, dean of students at Southwestern.
Wow. I'm dizzy.
Yeah, I've been all over.
When did you start at Southwestern?
Fall 2016.
Okay. It's quite and this is pretty cool. I mean, you knew you figured out what you wanted in school, and you actually did it for your whole career. Is this a first, guys? I don't know. So this is probably, I'm gonna take a pause here. Doug or Shirley, what am I missing? I know there's some other questions. We've got 15 minutes or so.
You've told us something about your extracurricular activities. How about your academic life? Was that satisfactory for you?
Oh yeah, I loved it. So I was a French major all along. I was taking French classes from the day I stepped foot on campus, and I knew that I was always going to graduate with a French major. I am also a person who has very diverse interests, and so I ended up having, I would say, like almost minors in 5 or 6 different things. Like I took, I can't remember, gosh, I took 4 or 5 courses in Italian, but there wasn't an Italian minor available at the time. I took 3 semesters of Russian. I took 15 or 18 hours in communication. I took a lot of English classes, and I was what did they call it? A peer mentor, or there was some position where you sat in on a first year seminar and helped the faculty member, review papers and that kind of thing. Peer tutor, peer mentor. Part of the problem with working in colleges is that everything starts to blend together at what is true at which place. So It was
Yeah.
called something like that. It was like in the first year seminar.
It sounds like you made your own curriculum for your career.
I definitely had a very, I think, broad set of courses. The only department, I'm pretty sure the only department I did not take a course in was business. And then when I was at TCU, I did an MBA, so covered it later.
Maybe I missed out. You know, you talk about memory. Sometimes I can't remember what I had for breakfast. You know, I'm at that age. But do you notice some of the other women we've interviewed commented on the difference now with the women, you know, coming into college? To play athletics, they've had to be in club sports, and that someone like you would never have a chance today to really walk on maybe and actually get to play. Do you notice that difference, and do you see it as a problem or a benefit? Could you?
Oh, wow. We only have 15 more minutes.
Right. You can use them all up if you want.
So I think there are a couple different roads to answer that question. Gosh, I don't even know which one to go down first. So at Southwestern, you can still walk on. We give anybody, any student athlete who wants the chance to play, even if they've never been seen by a coach before, if they go to the coach and say, I'd like to have a tryout, any student can have a tryout. So if they're good enough, they could make the team even without all of that prior stuff. And it is true that club sports and varsity sports in high school are at a level now that they weren't at back then. And I think, like many other things that our students do these days, if you are not kind of committed to the point of overcommitment, almost to like creating a fixation in your life that puts the rest of your life in an unhealthy balance, you might not have the skills that it takes to beat enough other people to be on the team. And I think, you know, nobody goes to a Division III school to become a professional athlete. So it's really important that we have a good, healthy perspective on what athletics is for. There are some people out there who will tell you that Division III athletes are actually more dedicated to their sport because they are only playing for the love of the sport. They are not playing to keep a scholarship that keeps them in school. And so pretty much everything they do, Division III, is taking time away from their ability to stay in school academically, whereas in Division I, everything they're doing is supporting their ability to stay at the school if they're on scholarship. So I think it's a delicate balancing act, and it starts way before, you know, the factors that play into it happen way before a student actually comes to us, just like with everything else in their lives, you know. Sexual assault, which is also a major area of concern for Title IX, the attitudes that students develop and the knowledge that they have or don't have coming to school as an 18-year-old, that's all done before they get to us. So when something happens on campus, I don't think there's any reasonable person who's worked in this area who believes that if we had just done one more training, we could have prevented that from happening. You know, we live in an ecosystem where we have said some things are more important than other things, and we have pushed young people, I think, to do more, achieve more, win more awards, fill up your time more, all of those things that have created the situation that we are in today, both with athletics and with other equity issues.
I guess just to follow up on that is that the fact that so many players now just concentrate on one sport. You know, they don't branch out and are encouraged to play other sports, and that even in a school like Trinity or like Southwestern, that I just wonder how many women are actually maybe playing more than one sport, or is it still, if I'm going to play volleyball, it's going to be volleyball, and that's what I'm going to do?
Yeah. I think we have maybe 3 or 4 two-sport athletes at Southwestern, and that's from a pool of about 500 athletes. In general, I think the coaches frown on it. You know, they don't want you playing another sport, because if you get injured in that other sport, then you can't play on my team. So yeah, I think there's definitely a focus on give your all to the one thing, you know, make a decision, choose the thing that's most important to you. And even some of our dual sport athletes, it's like they're on the track team and the cross country team. Well, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. I'm wearing my cross country t-shirt today.
Nice.
So anyway, you know, to that end, I'm imagining the Southwestern, not unlike Trinity, has an active intramural program.
Mhm.
And is there some cross-pollination between the two? Intercollegiate?
I think most of our coaches discourage most of their students from playing intramurals. Not to say that they don't do it at all, but intramurals can be pretty competitive. And if you get injured in an intramural game, that's even worse than if you get injured in a game where you're on another intercollegiate team. Because it was for what, you know, for fun. You broke your foot and now you can't play in the soccer season.
Mm-hmm. Although one of my favorite stories, Shelley, that we got from an athlete that I used to play with, she was a 4-sport athlete, was she had made the tennis team. This is back in the day that it was a nationally competitive and top ranked tennis team. And she hurt her ankle playing just pickup basketball. And that's when she realized she really didn't want to play tennis. She wanted to play these other 4 sports. So sometimes serendipity can play a role too, I guess.
Yeah.
I can probably, we're getting some really fun trends from a lot of you former athletes. And so what I'm curious about now is, when you look back on your days as an athlete, how do you feel that's helped you achieve what you've achieved personally or professionally? What are the positives that have come out of that experience?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, I've always been a team person, you know. I think playing a team sport where there's no way that you can carry the team yourself, even if you are the best pitcher on the team. If people can't hit, if people don't know how to field, if people don't know where to throw the ball when they field it, the team's not going to do well. And so I think interdependence is a really important skill and philosophy that has been a thread through my career. And I think that started, you know, even on gymnastics as a younger athlete. It's an individual performance, but you're ranked by how your team does. And so it's about doing everything you can to be the best you can be, and also to help promote excellence among your team members. And that requires, you know, a level of selflessness to some degree, but also a willingness to hold people accountable and a willingness to help others improve, and to be, you know, willing to hear criticism and try to improve yourself. I think there's also, you know, a level of discipline that comes pretty naturally to me. And I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know, do you do well on athletic teams because you're already prone to good discipline, or does the athletic team teach you the discipline? But I think there's definitely a connection there. I've always been able to, in my studies and in my career, you know, make things happen, get things to move forward, by bringing some level of discipline and organization to whatever's going on within, you know, my work team or my academics or that sort of thing. And I think also it teaches you how to, well, when you lose, it teaches you how to be humble. I think anyone who plays on a team and all they ever do is win isn't getting the full benefit of learning what sports can teach you. Said by a loser.
No, and that's the thing, is I don't think it's not a win-lose scenario, is it? You can always gain something from that.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I've been a lifelong athlete. Like, I play in a sand volleyball league now. every, I mean, not right now because of the pandemic, but
Mhm.
until March, you know, I had a team where we play every Monday night, and hopefully we'll be back to it soon. It's a feeling and an activity, regardless of the sport, that is something I always want to have in my life.
Mhm. Cool. Well, our other two interviewees here are living examples of that. So, yeah.
Well, Shelley, I've often said to that as an advisor that I found that the greatest problems that most students had was time management. And I would have interviews, they had a lot of time. They had plenty of time to manage it. But I found over the years that the athletes and often people in drama, you know, where they required a lot of extra work, they found the time.
Mhm.
And that was a skill, a lifetime skill that a lot of people don't acquire. That that it's more possible if you're an athlete, you have to do that.
Yeah, that's true. Our athletics department tells athletes that they should follow an 8-8-8 schedule. So every day you get 8 hours of sleep, you spend 8 hours on your academics, and with the other 8 hours you can do whatever you want, which includes athletics. So if you've got 4 hours worth of athletics responsibilities, that means you've only got 4 hours left to do whatever else you need to do.
Okay,
I like that. Okay.
good.
So I just got a text, so I apologize. I'm trying to multitask. I'm doing a lousy job of it. So is there anything, Shelley, that we haven't covered that you think, I hope you understand now what it is we're trying to do here, and that is to kind of tell the story, the history, but also the personal stories of especially those 30 years where we think women's athletics really got traction. Anything else you'd like to add that you don't think we've covered?
Not that I can think of, but as this has shown, my memory is not fantastic. So
Most of ours isn't.
Yeah.
And you know, this has been such an interesting exercise because you're, I think, about the 30th or 32nd interview we've done. And we just had a different mindset back in that day. We were just so, frankly, happy to be on this amazing campus with these great professors, playing games that we loved. And there has not been a discouraging word home on the range. So that's great. Yeah. Shelley, I really appreciate it. We had not gotten much softball stories here. And of course, personally, I wanted to make sure we captured a few, and you got to play, be one of the first teams to play on that beautiful field. And I still love going there today. So someday, if the good Lord willing, we can all get back together, I'd love to have a reunion of some of these folks we've talked to. So we need to get you back to campus. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Anything else, Doug or Shirley, that we've missed?
I just say as a historian that oral history is a really important component, because I can read all the Trinitonian articles and I can get all the statistics and so forth, but it's not until you really talk to somebody who has been a part of it and you get what they're thinking, and you find out it's quite different. I mean, I think many of us thought, well, we're going to find a lot of the players would be resentful about that things weren't equal in Title IX, and most of them weren't even thinking about that. They were playing, they were enjoying what they were doing, they loved their coaches, and so it gives you a whole different perspective on history. And I know a lot of people don't, you know, they say, well, oral history is not as good. Well, it is, and I think that it's something that really adds to the story. Maybe you don't remember a date, or maybe you don't remember a game, but you remember how you felt, and you remember what it was like to be there and do that, and that really adds a lot to our story. And we really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us, and we hope we'll have something that will come out that will be able to let people know what it was like to be a woman and be an athlete at Trinity University.
Great.
And I'm
Thank
going to
you.
add on,
It's been a pleasure.
From my frozen position, something else that we have been impressed with is the versatility of careers that these athletes have pursued. And you are certainly a prime example of what a liberal arts education can do for someone.
Thank you. I'm a
And
strong
I'm gonna-
believer in the liberal arts because I've stayed in it my whole life. So
Sure.
I'm happy to hear that.
I want to add one more thing, just and then we'll close out this meeting for Abra's sake and also for your time, Shelley. But you know, the other theme that's coming to mind as I listen to a lot of you guys and also remember my experience, I think the real heroes of this story are the coaches and the administrators, who and tell me if you agree or disagree, who I think really kind of protected us from the politics and from the inequities that they surely saw, but we weren't really understanding or experiencing. What do you think about that thought?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly when I think about Teresa Mahu, she was such a little ball of positivity that you just, I mean, I don't remember her ever complaining about anything or saying a negative word. And so, you know, it just wouldn't have come up. Like, we were just happy, like Doug was saying, we're happy for what we had. And it was never a perspective of, oh, other people have it better than we do. It was like, you know, we get to go out and play 2 games today. And after that, we get to eat at the Golden Corral because we're playing Hill Junior College in Hillsboro. You know, it was just, I mean, we were just having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, if it was a free meal, I'd be there, right? Okay, Shelley, thank you so much for what you could remember and also just a lot of the wisdom that those last couple of decades have brought and that you could share with us. So I echo what Doug and Shirley said. It's been a fun experience and you make it that way. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. My pleasure.